Hey everybody, welcome to Demize, where we do a lot of streaming every Wednesday, streaming most Fridays, a couple of other streams thrown in there, just whenever we feel like it pretty much. We really try to be responsive when we're on stream, taking a look at the chat, answering your questions if you have them, but some of you have also pointed out that it would be really useful if we had a rules video to accompany some of our more common streamed games so that you could just go check that out and refresh yourself on the rules if you need to. We love that idea, which is why we are here today on the first inaugural Rules Rundown. So I'm going to be walking you through the rules of Massive Darkness, terrifying dungeon delve extraordinaire, so that we can all be on the same page when we start playing it later tonight. So the first thing you need to know about Massive Darkness is that it is a dungeon delve game for 1 to 6 players in which players control characters. Characters are represented on the map by little figurines, in this case Elias, the battle wizard. And characters also have a card. Each card has a number of components, which is name, image of them, but also the important things are right here. This is your shadow mode skill, and this is your special skill. Each of those will be usable by your character throughout the game. Now, the difference between this and a game like Demize, say, is that your character does not inherently determine your class, and instead, your class is determined by these sheets. These are terrible, these are writable, because you'll be gaining experience and using it to chart sort of your progression and your path separately from your character. Each class sheet has a name, in this case, Battle Wizard, because, he's got a staff and a sword. Of course he's a Battle Wizard. You've got your signature skill, which you can use any number of times per turn at the cost of 1 experience. You've got your free class skill, which you can use once per turn for no experience. And then you've got this whole big area right here, which is what that's where you'll spend experience. You can gain abilities throughout the course of the game as you gain experience, level up, kill monsters, and all that sort of thing. Abilities do lots of really powerful things for you, such as giving you extra rerolls, giving you enchantments that you can use to make attacks, which we'll talk about in a minute. So that's how you start the game. You select a character, you take your character board, give yourself some starting equipment, and then you're ready to go. So gameplay takes place over a number of rounds, and the first thing that happens in any round is the player phase. Players take turns, starting with the first player, represented by this token, performing 3 actions on their turn. There's a number of different actions that you can take. The first, and probably most common, because let's face it, it's a dungeon delve, is attacking. When you make an attack, you can decide whether you're making that attack at melee range, at ranged range, or at magic range. Each of these has slightly different parameters. Melee can only be made if you're in the same zone as someone. Ranged cannot be made in the same zone as someone, but can be made any distance in a straight line, and magic splits the difference, being made at 0 or 1 range. When you make an attack, the first thing that you're going to do is pick the type, melee, ranged, magic. Once you've done that, you're going to assemble a dice pool from the attack dice. Attack dice are yellow and red, and the way that you assemble an attack pool is by combining your relevant weapons. So, this is a weapon card, and it has a number of components, as with any card. You've got the name, image. The short sword doesn't have any special abilities, but if you did have special abilities, they would appear in a little box down here. And then at the bottom, this is the really important part. Each weapon has things that it contributes to your dice pool. So in this case, the short sword adds 1 red die to your melee dice pool and nothing to anything else. So a different weapon might add more or less to melee, ranged, magic, or defense pools. Once you've assembled a die pool, let's say in this case you have 1 yellow and 1 red, you're going to roll that against your target's defense pool comprised of green and blue dice. Generally speaking, green and red dice are more powerful but rarer than yellow and blue dice. Once you've assembled both the attack and the defense die pools, you'll roll. And in this case, you can see that the defender severely outrolled the attacker. The number of swords present is way lower than the number of shields, which is used to inflict damage. Now, there are a few nuances to this. As I mentioned, some of the abilities on your class sheet can give you the ability to re-roll 1 or more of the attacker or defender's dice. There are also enchantments, which will be using things shown here, BAMs, or diamonds, to activate different enchantments. Enchantments can be used for powerful effects like free swords, reduce the number of shields that your defender has, or even effects like stun, AoE, really powerful things like that. But for now, let's just take a look at this result as rolled. 2 swords versus 5 shields, no damage is inflicted. If the attacker had inverted this and rolled 5 swords to 2 shields, 3 damage would be inflicted and divided up among the enemies. So that's making an attack, like I said, by far one of the most common types of actions. The other types of actions that you can take are to reorganize or trade, which is to move items around in your inventory or the inventories of any character on your space. You can get up, which is to recover from stun, or you can move. Now, movement is a little bit confusing. When you move, you spend one of your 3 actions to move, which gives you 2 movement points. Each movement point can be spent on one of 3 things. First of all, there's moving from one zone to another. There's opening a door, which prompts spawns, either treasure chests or enemies. And there's picking up. When you pick up everything currently on your tile, including treasure, any sort of special abilities like this lair token that grants you extra experience, or equipment that was dropped by a murdered enemy. Murdered ally. Enemy inventories go straight into yours. But let's talk about opening a door. When you open a door, you'll draw one of these red door cards. Door cards have 3 entries showing you what spawns in the 3 rooms comprising the chamber, let's call it, that you just opened. So in this case, the first thing spawns a guard card and 3 chests. The second one spawns no enemy and 2 chests. And the final one would spawn a guard card and 2 chests, but this chamber only contains 2 rooms. So we'll spawn a guard card. Well, what does that mean? So when you spawn a guard card, you take an enemy off the top of the deck that matches the level of your current tile. Your tile is wherever your characters have reached, in this case, level 1. If I had been to here instead, then this would deactivate and we would access level 2. But I didn't, which is important because I don't want to get murdered. So we're currently level 1, which means we're going to draw a level 1 enemy off the deck and see that it's a goblin archer. Now, goblin archer is a type of enemy called a mob. Mobs come in, well, mobs. They spawn a number of enemy tokens proportional to the number of players. So in this case, 1 per player. Let's say we're playing a 6-player game. You spawn 6 goblin archers. Look at those little buggers all in there. Each mob also comes with a boss. Now, a boss has a slightly different figurine. In this case, they're led by some sort of wizard. I guess like a wizard archer. I don't know. I didn't really think it through. But the boss is the core of the mob. The boss can't be attacked until all of the other enemies have been cleared, and they are the ones who spawn with equipment. That's right. I said equipment. In Massive Darkness, there are enemies known as guardians, which are bosses that we've talked about already, agents, which are single enemies that are individually more powerful and have more health, but don't come with a massive group, and lesser and greater roaming monsters. We'll cover those later because those are scary. Guardians, like characters and unlike mobs, actually have equipment that they can use. So when a guardian spawns, in this case the boss goblin archer, you're going to draw a piece of equipment off the top of the deck that equals that mob's level. You're going to see, in this case, it's a chainmail armor. You're going to attach it to that goblin, and that goblin is going to be able to use that equipment against you, adding its attack or defense dice to its pool. Now, this is really, really powerful, and it makes the game really versatile, really dynamic. And it's also great because once you kill that enemy, you get to take that piece of equipment. Very much a what you see is what you get type of situation. Now, enemies and equipment both scale with level. So I mentioned that short sword earlier. Well, this is a level 2 short sword. It adds 1 red die. This is a level 1 short sword. It only adds 1 yellow die. So you're definitely going to want to move through the zones, through the tiles, gaining levels, getting access to more and more powerful equipment. Treasure chests also give you equipment, usually based on the level appropriate to the tile that you've activated, but there are special treasure chests, kind of the little extra banding around there, hard to see. Those give you over-leveled equipment that in a normal game you can use immediately. So that's enemies. That's what spawns when you open a door. Finally, on your turn, you can do 2 free actions, which are to transmute, taking 3 items of any level and turning them into 1 item of 1 level higher than the lowest item transmuted this way. So 3 level 1 items, which get you a level 2, and 2 level 1s would still only get you a level 2. And then finally, you can use your signature ability as a free action as long as you can spend 1 experience to do it. So that's an exhaustive look at the player phase. After all the players have moved, they've made their attacks, they've gotten counterattacked if they've left any enemies left standing. After all of that is done, the enemies get a phase. Every enemy group on the board, whether it's mobs, agents, or roaming monsters, gets a turn. On that turn, they attack if able. If they weren't able, then they move. Then they attack if able. And if they still weren't able, they move again. So attack, move, attack, move. After any attack, their activation ends. And that's the enemy phase. Then there's the experience phase, when players can spend the experience that they've gained. Experience in Massive Darkness is gained as a party, mostly. So there's going to be a lot of equitable leveling up. You know, whenever you kill a boss, everyone gets 3. Whenever you kill a roaming monster, everyone gets 5, no matter who landed the killing blow. Much better system than Demize, I think, personally. After you spend your experience, there's the event phase. Event cards, the black back, can give you benefits, such as healing, or bad stuff, such as roaming monsters. Roaming monsters, we talked about a little bit, and I promised you that I'd get to them. These are... I'm not going to show you the card. I'm going to show you the figurine, because this is terrifying. That's like half again the size of my battle wizard. But roaming monsters are extremely powerful enemies that are going to have 20, 30, maybe even 40 health, depending on the size and strength of them. They're going to have really powerful special abilities. They're going to chase you down. You're going to die. It's going to be great. Roaming monsters, unlike any other type of enemy, don't have levels 1 through 5. Instead, they have lessers, which are tiers 1 through 3, and greaters, tiers 4 and 5. Slightly simplified, but no less dangerous. Finally, after all the events have gone, there's the end phase, cleanup, all of that jazz. One thing that we didn't talk about that is very important to the game is the darkness itself. So no game called Massive Darkness would be complete without, well, a darkness mechanic. And you can sort of see here from the map that there are light zones, yellowish, whitish, and dark zones, bluish, purple, black. Any character that is standing in a dark zone is considered to be in shadow, which has certain gameplay effects. You're allowed to activate certain items, you're allowed to activate your shadow mode skill, and you are considered to be in shadow mode for the purposes of any passive abilities that you may have activated on your class sheet. Other things affect shadow mode as well. You know, if you're in shadow mode and not in line of sight, then enemies won't target you. They'll target the closest player in a light zone instead, and other things like that. And that is core gameplay for Massive Darkness. We've got a few different things going on. We're going to be playing story mode, which means instead of tracking 1 experience for 1 experience, we're going to be using what's called the micro experience track here. Because our characters are expected to persist across 6, 10 different scenarios, instead of being 1-to-1, every experience gets you a micro experience, and you can redeem 5 micro experience for 1 full experience. It's basically just a way to slow down your progression, make sure that you can really savor each individual level. Finally, story mode does place some restrictions on the equipment that characters can use. After all, in scenario 1, if you got to, level 5 or tier 5 on the board, it wouldn't make sense for you to get a level 5 item and then use that at the beginning of the next round when you're fighting level 1 enemies. It would just be OP. So instead, you can only use equipment equal to or less than the current level of the scenario. You can still carry it, you just can't use it yet. And the final difference is that characters can carry any number of pieces of equipment during the scenario, but between scenarios, when you would, for example, visit town, you can only carry 6 items from scenario to scenario. So it places a few limits on you, kind of makes things a little bit slower, a little bit more, of a proper story arc, but we'll see how it goes. This will be our first time playing story mode Massive Darkness, so thanks for joining us on this journey.